All right, welcome everyone. It's Chris Petri. Thanks so much for coming by and painting with us here. We're going to create a wonderful windmill painting. Watercolors. We're going to show you how to do the glazing technique where we're going to go with a light wash over the whole painting first. Let that dry, and then we'll go over with our darker washes over top of the windmill, the boathouse, the tree, the shoreline, some of the trees along the coastal area. You're going to have so much fun learning the glazing technique here on this video, and also how to create a beautiful windmill. We haven't done this before, so this is the first time we've created a windmill painting. Hope you'll enjoy it. Someone in the comments section mentioned it. Let's do a windmill painting if we can. And I'm always open to suggestions when it comes to new subject matter. So it's really, for me, it's just a great thing to just try something a little bit different, something new that I haven't done before on YouTube. Obviously, welcome. If you've never been on my channel before, everything watercolor here. We do watercolor beaches, boats, seascapes, landscape paintings, barns, flowers, still life paintings, figure paintings, portrait paintings. We do everything watercolor here. And then we even drill down on some really cool details like this, doing a nice windmill painting. So let's do it, and we'll get started in just a second. All right, so we just saw the finished painting. We'll get started here. First thing I was going to mention is I do tape off my paper most times. This is actually fluid paper. It's called fluid watercolor paper. And this is some 3M, Scotch 3M, and the number is number 2020. Contractor's grade masking tape. This I find is great tape. I just bought like 4 or 5 rolls the other day. I ordered on Amazon. This is fantastic tape. It doesn't tear the paper at all when I lift it up, and it's just seems to perform incredible. So I really like this tape. I think I'm going to be using this in the future a lot. So I use that tape to tape off around the exterior of the paper, and the paper is a square shape. That's 8 by 8 inch by 8 inch square pad, and it's gummed paper, gummed block. And again, I tape the border so when we're done painting, we can just lift up the tape and have a nice, clean, crisp border around our composition here. And of course, we're doing our windmill. And I'm trying to go by recollection, actually. Someone mentioned in the comment section, Chris, can you do a windmill? And I don't think I've ever created a windmill on YouTube for my videos. So this is something brand new that I've done, or that I'm going to paint here that I haven't done before. So what I'll do is I actually created a windmill many years ago, probably 10 years, 15 years ago even. I painted it for my mom and my dad for their bedroom. They wanted a painting, and we came up with something that would be really interesting, and it was a beautiful windmill kind of scene with some water, and so I'm going to try to, I couldn't find the painting here at the house, and so I think we take paintings down and put new ones up all the time. We're always like changing around paintings constantly here, so that we don't get bored with the same paintings up on the wall. So in any case, I couldn't find it, but I'm going to go with my best recollection of what it kind of looked like, and we'll go from there. And so I'm just going to try to go by recollection. So I think I'm going to use the 1/3 rule. So if my paper is approximately 6 inches, so 2, 4, 6. So every 2 inches winds up being about 1/3 for a 6-inch picture frame here that we have. And then we'll put a pencil line around here. Like that. And then so let's say the first third, even a little bit below that third, I'll go a little bit lower than the third line. I'll just put like a very light pencil line here. And that'll be for the distant marshes and trees and things like that. And then from there, I'm trying to, from recollection, I think I have the windmill over here. So I'll just do a light pencil line to start with, just first to start. And then I can always adjust it later. Always remember that when you do a light contour drawing here, we're doing a light preliminary sketch or a light preliminary contour drawing. I just keep in the back of my mind that I can change this if I want to. So I'm going to remember that the windmill was about, not quite right in the middle of the paper like this. It was a little over to the left. And then I think the blades were like this. The actual windmill itself was a little bit on an angle. And those actual blades, those windmill blades are pretty big. So I think I'll put it like this. And they go down pretty far too, almost to the bottom. And then with the windmill blades, nothing too definite. You maybe just have a couple marks on there to get the gist of it. And then there's that's the shaft that turns the windmills that goes in here, which is all the mechanics are inside the windmill itself at the top of the windmill. And so I think that's pretty good for the windmill. And I believe, yeah, I remember there were some trees along the, so again, I'll just put in some trees and so forth. And I think there was like a house or something on the side over here. So I'll put that there. And then there was some water over here on the right. So maybe I'll find myself my needed eraser here. And we'll put a good, nice straight line on here where the water is. So that's going to be pretty much in line with the rest of the this is, I guess, our base of operation here for the ground level. And then the water level here just is an extension of the ground level here. So we're right on like that. So this will be the water over here to the right. And we'll have maybe this might be a boathouse here. Okay, and then with some trees. We have our windmill. So I think this kind of looks good. I think we're going to keep this simplistic. We're doing a composition here, no worries. Maybe we have a window here. Like that. And then maybe there's I thought there was a small entranceway to the windmill there. And I think that's good. All right. So we've had a real fun time here just getting some preliminary sketching in. And I don't think we have to go over anything a second time. Sometimes, you might want to go with a darker pencil line if you want to, so you can go over it a second time, the drawing. But I think we have it pretty solid here. The drawing, the sketch first, as we completed it here. And then the sky is just going to be a loose sky, as you know, many of you that follow me. And if it's your first time here, welcome. Great to have you here. Great to have you here on my channel. I'm really excited that you're going to be painting along with me here, and all of us. And I always mention, I usually keep my skies real simple, kind of free, loose and free sky. I don't like to get too I don't like to have my skies looking busy or too over thought out or anything like that, because the sky usually is, it's important in the painting, but the main focal points are the windmill in this boathouse, maybe in some of the water and the trees. Like that's more of the focal point of the painting. So the sky kind of takes a little bit of a, secondary part in the whole scheme of the painting. So that's why I wouldn't get too caught up with like, clouds and trying to get too fancy with things. And plus, I think skies look better just done really quickly and really loosely. My own personal opinion, my take on it. Not the world's most, authority on painting watercolor skies or anything like that. I'm just saying that's what I like. You're the artist. You're going to figure out what you like to do with your skies. And maybe in future videos, we will do a little more work on maybe doing some really thought out skies. Maybe we'll do some real interesting clouds and things like that. We'll think about doing that in the future. But for right now, again, for this type of painting, I'm going to keep it real loose with the sky in the water, and of course we have the really nice windmill here, and then maybe we're going to actually take a shoreline here approach to this, and I'll try to make the shoreline sort of like that. So here's our body of water, and then more or less our shoreline here, and so we'll have some sand, some weeds, some bushes, and we'll also create some real cool three-dimensional quality to the painting by adding some interesting, maybe some bushes over here, maybe a small tree over here, like this. So you'll see how we can sometimes add some different elements into the painting that will give it a more three-dimensional quality. Because I think most people respond to three-dimensional quality of a painting. So we'll kind of further talk about that as we go through the tutorial here in the coming sections of the tutorial. But for right now, we're all set. We have our drawing complete. Looks good. We'll come back in just a second. I'm just going to take a quick break. We'll come back. We'll start getting our washes in, and you're going to see how fun this is. And we're going to use the glazing technique on this painting. So I have a book called Watercolor Methods for Success. It's in the comments section below. You can always click on it. And I have a 2-minute video that covers each page. So you can kind of see I have over 65 of my best watercolor paintings in that book. So you'd have literally years of fun painting all of the paintings in my book. And also I have all the colors of all the paintings and what I'm using, the different colors in the paintings and how I did each painting. And usually I'll mention, actually I always mention how I painted the painting, whether I painted it alla prima or using the glazing technique. So here we're going to use the glazing technique, and we'll discuss that as we go once we start painting in a second. And then in other videos, you'll hear me talk about alla prima painting, which means you just start in one place and paint the whole painting from there. So both are great methods, and I use them both all the time. Sometimes I use them interchangeably. Sometimes I use them in combination of one another, or sometimes I'll use either or exclusively. So kind of a fun thing, but in my book, I cover all the details of that, as well as tons of exercises in my book. So I always promote my book. Hope you don't mind. It's kind of a selfish kind of thing, but I think my book is absolutely phenomenal for anyone that's been painting in watercolor maybe a year or two or so, or actually even if you've been painting a long time. You have a lot of fun paintings in there you can work from and have it as like a bit of a coffee table book too. All right, let's come right back. We'll start the painting. All right, so we're going to get rolling again here. I just wanted to mention, I have a water container here. I keep it right to the right of my work table here. So just a quick informational. I like to mention what I'm doing so you kind of have an idea of like what my working station looks like. I have a masonite board, about a 2 foot by 3 foot wide masonite wood board. It's about 1/8 of an inch thick masonite board. You can get it at any big box store. They'll cut it for you. Like if you go to a Home Depot or Lowe's, they'll trim it for you right inside the store for you, any sizes you want. You can cut multiple boards, different sizes. Sometimes you might want to work, have a couple boards you can work with, like if you're outdoors or something working like in a lawn chair or something like that. And then if maybe you have a board set up like a 2 foot by 3 foot board for like if you're working on your kitchen table or you're in your dining room or something like that, or in an easy chair and you want a larger board. So I have multiple boards, masonite boards. They trim them to size for me at the Home Depot by my house and the Lowe's. And you just give them the measurements of what you need and they'll cut them right down for you. And it's just simple. It's called masonite board. Like a mason jar, M-A-S-O-N, masonite, I-T-E, board, and it's a 1/8 inch thick, so it's like a thin hard board, very rigid, very good, very durable. You could last a lifetime for you when you get them cut to size, and then you're all set. So I have that for my board, and I have it pitched just a little bit, about 10% of a pitch going this way towards me like this, and actually what I do is I just put a 2x4 on the top of my setup here underneath my board, and then that gives me the pitch. And then I just have some blue or green construction paper I put down to make it look good here on the video, and that's really it. And then I just tape down my paper so it doesn't move around, and then we have that nice border we talked about in the beginning. And then here we just have our palette, and I tape my palette down with some frog tape, which I get at the Home Depot or the Lowe's. It's really nice. You just use it, you roll it up in a little roll like this. So I usually just do this. I roll it up in a roll like that, and then I put it underneath the palette, and then when I put it down, it doesn't move around. So it's kind of good to have everything nice and secure when you're working. So that's my setup basically, and again, the water container to my right, and then you could have a sponge next to your water container to check off a little bit of water. So if I have I put some water. So I put water in my container, and then I rinse off my brush, and then if you want to, it's a good idea to kind of take some water off your brush once in a while as you're painting. Tap it on a little bit of a sponge or some tissues or paper towels. I like to hold a tissue in my hand a lot of times, rinse off my brush, tap a little bit of water off on there, and then I can go in and work on my painting. The thing that does is it avoids having large puddles of water in your palette, in your colors, your actual wells, and as well as your palette. So if you keep rinsing off your brush, if you can imagine, and you don't check any water off, and then you go over here all the time, eventually you're going to have big puddles of water everywhere, and then that's going to keep your paintings from having really good dynamics, good strong tonal values, which is the darks and the lights of your painting. So that's a great thing to remember. That'll help you tremendously in your watercolor paintings. That was one of the most powerful things that I learned, I guess, when I first started watercolor after a couple years of struggling and trying to figure out how everything works with watercolor. I just remember when I learned how to sort of keep my paints from getting too watery and too puddly with too much water, that's when I was starting to get more real good-looking washes on my paintings with good, strong colors and tonal values, lights and darks. So let's work on that idea here as we go. So what we'll do is we're going to do, again, we talked about the glazing technique, which means we're going to do a light wash of watercolor across the whole painting. So what I'll do is we'll take our brush here. This is a number 6 or number 8 Raphael Kolinsky Sable brush. And you can always tell this brush, it's got the orange tip on it. And I just get some fresh clean water, crystal clear water, and then I just wet the paper up top here. So we're going to pre-wet the paper, not drenching it and flooding it, but just a good amount of water up top here, right? And then maybe a little bit of dampness down here, and bring some of that water down here a little bit, but not everywhere. Just the main thing is the top. The top is where you get the most of your water, right up there, like that. Wet the paper good, get it saturated. And then again, you kind of just gently tap a little bit of that water down, kind of blot a little bit of moisture, a little bit of the water down onto your sky, but not the whole thing, as I mentioned. We don't want to have too much water flooding down, but just enough to get started. Then, while that's starting to soak in beautifully, we're just going to go with a simple sky color, cerulean blue. French ultramarine blue. So we're going to use a couple blues, French ultramarine blue, cerulean blue, maybe some raw sienna, just a little bit of raw sienna, like that. And I think that should be perfect. And then you can just do a little more, so we have a little more, color in there and tonal value. We don't want to go too light, but that should be about it though. And then you just go up and let the watercolor do the work itself, which is so much fun. You leave some white paper for clouds, that's all. So you'll leave some spaces for white clouds, as much as you want or as little as you want. You don't even have to have clouds if you don't wish to. You're the artist, you're going to sort of figure out where you might want your clouds. Maybe you don't want any clouds, it's up to you. But as you can see, if I just pop a little bit of watercolor onto that paper, and even a little bit darker up top here, so I'll go with a little more blue up here, make it a little darker up here. You can do that quickly, just get some darker wash up there, like that. And then you take some, rinse off the brush and just use a damp brush. And then you just take that gently and then work it on down, like this. And I want to keep that roof of the lighthouse white, of the windmill white. But you can kind of see how you can get some really nice right, and it's free flowing and fun. You see how I'm just letting the watercolor do its thing. I'm just placing some paint onto the paper, and when we pre-wet that paper, it does most of the work for you. So if you can imagine, pre-wetting your paper actually becomes like a assistant for you. So it's the pre-wetting your paper becomes an assistant as you're working with your watercolor, and you put the paint on there, and then it does its own thing and kind of helps you, like that. And then I just tap some paint around, and it all flows nicely and infuses, and then you have it. You might take a touch of orange just at the very, very bottom of the sky. So I rinse off my brush. I don't want too much orange, but that might be enough right there. Kind of very light, right? You see how light that is? Like that. And we just put a little bit at the bottom here. And I paint around the roof of that boathouse there. And I work a little bit of that orange up into the sky, just like that. Just a little bit though. Not too much. Like that. Doesn't that look great? And then we take some of that blue, and we're going to do some of the water in the ocean here. That's like that. And then a little bit of that orange too. We want to put a little bit of the orange in the water, the ocean water here, like that. And then even a little bit of blue in the land area. So we're just kind of putting some blue into the land area just to have that whole entire painting covered with that really nice kind of harmonizing blue of the sky. Because let's face it, the blue of the sky influences everything in our painting when we're painting outdoors. And that's about it. I add a little bit of wash to a little bit of light blue there. Here too, as well. And I think, so I'll just do a careful little bit of blue paint there, some on the side of the boathouse over here, as you have seen me do here, and then again some blue paint on the windmill. We'll leave the roof white, and we'll leave the roof here white, and the roof here white. So we'll keep those kind of like bright pops of white color, which is the sunlight coming down and hitting those roofs, and there may be very light color roofs, so that'll pick up the real nice bright white of the paper. And that's really it. You really, if you could imagine, this is the glazing technique at its best. Again, the water, especially the glazing technique, it's like, and remember, it's like an assistant for you when you're creating your watercolors. You wet the paper first and dampen up your paper, and then you just put a little bit of water on your watercolor, a little bit of color, a little bit of water, damp brush, and you move around a little bit of paint and let it just infuse and flow, and all of a sudden you have beautiful things happening on your paper, and you don't even have to worry about it. It's not like you have to overwork things. You just let it do its work. And that's it. And you'll see how beautiful of an effect we have here. So then we're going to let this dry 100%. We'll take a quick break. And then at this point, you have two options. You can let this dry for about an hour and, come back in about an hour when the paper's really, really dry, like almost 90% dry, 95% dry. Or if you want, you could take a blow dryer and just gently blow dry off the paper in about 5 minutes or whatever, not even 5 minutes, and you can go back to work again. So it's up to you how you want to do it. You're the artist. You'll figure out, how you want to work. Maybe if it's a finished painting you're doing for a gallery showing or something, or, and you really want to do a spectacular job, you would probably let it dry naturally. You'll get a better effect if it dries naturally. But if you're just working on compositions like this and we're just doing some work to create some good paintings, some compositions as we're working to learn about watercolor, well, then you don't have to worry. You can just use the blow dryer, dry it off quickly, and then you're back to work again doing the rest of your painting. So this is the first real basic step of glazing technique. Your first wash, the whole entire paper, all the way from top to bottom, you cover it with your first light wash of color. And now we'll go over with the darker washes for our second glazing. And that's usually all you need is the first glazing, let it dry 100%. Second glazing we'll go over next. You'll be doing some darks and getting your finishing touches in on your painting, and that's all you really need. And we'll have a wonderful painting here and composition completed. So we'll be right back. Glad you're here. Glad we're painting together. And again, we'll have lots of fun in the future. This is just one part of what we do in watercolor. We do flower paintings. We do landscapes, seascapes, boat paintings, city scenes. We do portrait painting, figure painting. We do everything watercolor. So if you subscribe on the right-hand side below, you hit the subscribe button, you'll just see that each week we're creating all new paintings and new and different paintings all the time. So maybe some paintings you might not be interested in, other ones you really love, like it's up to you. But you'll always be seeing what we're doing on a constant basis, and you can jump in and paint along with us on the paintings that you really want to do and want to work on. And I know you have other favorite artists too you follow on YouTube, and so you'll be following them as well. But I'm glad you're here also jumping in on my channel and working with me too. And we'll all be learning all together in a really good way. Okay, so we'll come right back and finish up this painting with our final dark glazings over the top of this. And then we're home free. All right, so we're going to get started again here. I think I'm going to shift over to a number 5 Da Vinci travel brush, and that comes with the Schmincke set that we have here. So I will use this next, and we'll kind of just remember that now we're working into the darker bits of our painting, darker darks. So I think this one here, from what I recall, it was like a brownish color. So I'll use some brown and some French ultramarine blue, like that. And I'll just start getting in the washes here. And as you can see, when I use my paintbrush, I like to rest my hand on the paper and keep my point of my brush in view at all times so that I can kind of see where my point of my brush is, and then I can get really accurate brush strokes. Like that. Okay. Then I think over here was a little bit of blue. Like that. And this too was kind of darker over here. So you'll see I'm kind of doing my darker darks now. So we did the lights first. Again, the glazing technique, you do your lights first, and then you work in your darks once it's dry. And you can kind of And then over here, this is kind of a dark over here. There's a bit of a shadow over here on this side of the roof of the windmill, like that. And then also too, the windmill has some dark shadows on the blades, the actual windmill blades. So I'll be really careful and just kind of go real slow and put some darker darks over here, like that. And the same thing here, very carefully, a little bit at a time. So I do a little bit of a straight line, lift up, do a little more. So I kind of, my straight lines, a lot of times you'll notice when I'm working with some straight lines in watercolor, I tend to do a little bit at a time. So I'll go like an inch at a time, maybe, or so, or half an inch at a time. So I'll go like this. I'll go like one there, one stroke there, then stop, and then come up and then accurately get going on the next part and just do that there, like that, another, like that. That's just one method to do it. If you wanted to, you could take your paper, and if you didn't have your paper taped down or your pad of paper taped down, you could take your pad of paper and turn it like this sideways, and then maybe it's a little easier to do a straight line like this, going like this across like that. Tends to be a little more difficult to do a straight line if you're trying to do it vertically like this. So that tends to be something I used to struggle with a lot, trying to get straight lines vertically like this. It was easier to get straight lines like this, but I try to use that technique of just doing a little bit at a time, and it tends to work pretty good. All right, so now we have now we'll get some really super dark darks. Burnt sienna, French ultramarine blue, burnt umber. And maybe we'll make some darks there for the window, like that. There's some dark shadow under here. And if you go over a line, no problem. You take your tissue, you fold it up and make a little bit of a point on it like that, like a little bit of a crease on your tissue or a paper towel. Like that, you make a crease on it really tight, and then you just go in and press down and lift up. And sometimes you can lift up a little bit of paint. And if not, you can go back in and use a little bit of titanium white at the end of your painting. We'll do that too. At the end of our painting here, we're going to show you exactly how you can take a little bit of titanium white, just a smidgen of titanium white with a little bit of yellow ochre or orange mixed into it to make it a little bit of a warm tint to it. But you can take that titanium white straight out of the tube. We'll show you again toward the end of the video how you can make some touch-ups on your painting. So if you make a few little errors, you don't have to worry. You can actually touch things up. So we're going to show that next, later in the video, toward the end, the last 5 or 10 minutes. All right, so that's good there. I'll take a little bit of that light wash and just put that over here for the front of that boathouse there. Like that. Wow, we're pretty much getting there. So now we have our structures complete. The windmill, the boathouse, our first wash, of course, was completed. So now we're talking about going in and doing our darker darks as we're working now. And now we got to have some yellow ochre, raw umber, so some raw umber, yellow ochre, maybe a little bit of cerulean blue, and maybe a touch of sap green, like that. So we're going to keep ourselves a little bit of burnt sienna. We're going to make some kind of fall colors maybe. And then we're going to take our brush and hold it on the side like this. So this is really important if you can practice, and always remember, I always mention this, please do this as often as you need to when you're watching my videos in particular. if you're all of a sudden or in one of our videos in the middle of the video and you see something you haven't done before and you're going to try it, but you haven't done it, and you'll say, I've watched some of Chris's videos, but not all of them. And I never saw this before, and I've never tried this before. The thing you do is you hit pause on the tape and try to take a piece of scrap paper, which is a piece of printer paper, and then maybe try a few brush strokes, the way I'm kind of showing you a new way of maybe doing a brush stroke that you've never done before. So what I'm saying is you can do some beautiful brush strokes doing trees by holding your brush like this and turning it over like this and then holding it like this. If you can see that, right? And then you do some really beautiful trees like this. But if you've never done that before and you're always used to painting like this, that means, you'd want to practice this before you try it on your painting because, the painting's coming along great so far. I'm sure you're doing a great job. You have all these beautiful washes on the painting. You got everything to this point perfect. But if I do something different you haven't done before, just remember, no problem. Hit pause, maybe spend another 5-10 minutes, grab a scrap piece of paper, and just say, okay, Chris is saying hold the brush like this, and do some circular motions and some downstrokes and circular motions to get some really nice trees and foliage. If you try it, practice it on this one sheet of paper for maybe 5 or 10 minutes, then you put that to the side and you try it out on your painting, and I guarantee it'll work for you because you've already practiced it about 5-10 minutes. Now we'll do it. Doesn't that look good? Add a little bit of water. Could even do a couple upstrokes like this. Mix in some blue. A little bit darker down here on the bottom where the shadows are. So if you can imagine, the shadows are at the bottom of your trees. The darker shadows, right? The light's coming from up above, coming down. So your darker and cooler, so bluish colors and darker colors of your shadows are going to be at the bottom by the ground level. And I do a couple thumb scrapes going up like that. And we'll just continue that same idea. Come up here, get some more of that green and raw umber like that. Couple of upstrokes. So basically it's holding your brush like this. And you're using the side of the brush hairs, not the point. That's all it is, really. Then you could take your brush and go back to a normal bit of brush strokes there, like that, to get some of the areas on the, and then swing, and then go back around again. Hold it again like this. Flick up, like that. Rinse off the brush, maybe dry off a little bit of the water. Come back over here, green, a little bit of sap green, raw umber, like that. And that's it. You have some really nice foliage here. You could do a couple a couple of upstrokes here and there, leave some white paper. And now the same thing over here. You can also do this splashing technique again. If you have not splashed, no problem. You grab your practice paper and you say, okay, Chris is doing something else I did not try before, doing some splashing. You grab some scrap paper, get your brush with some water and paint, and just try splashing. Okay, and you try a few spots like that. You try it out, kind of feel comfortable with it. You know, you're kind of swinging down and tapping on it with your finger, like that. You can also take something else like another brush or a pencil and just, you can do tapping like that. You can also just use your finger like that. I prefer doing it this way, just tapping on it with my finger like this. And then you can blot a little bit with your finger, do a little bit of finger painting. And that's good. Then we're going to take a little bit of that same color, the green and the gold, raw umber green. And then we're going to do the same thing too. We're going to take the brush and we're going to go sideways like this. Then sometimes you'll turn your brush to the normal way you would hold your brush, like a pencil or a pen. And you just, to get some of your more finer points, lines like that along the shoreline here. So, and then once you have your shoreline kind of painted in where you're using the point of your brush very carefully, right? Then once you have that, then you can go back in, grab your paint and your colors, which are the kind of earth tones, greens, golds, brown, and you just drag your brush along the side of your brush again. And that gives you that nice broken feeling of some texture. Then I wet the brush, maybe a little bit of blue in there for some shadows. And then as you get closer to the foreground here, it'll be more darker colors. So you always remember when you're working closest to you in a painting, so the closer the painting is here, as close as you are here, then you can put in some darker paint. And you notice I'm just having fun here, right? I'm just putting in some darker brush strokes like that. Cerulean blue. Cerulean blue, some burnt umber. And I tend to like to paint right up to that tape. So when you paint right up to the tape, it's going to look great when we lift up the tape. All right, so now you see what we're doing here. No major complicated stuff here. I'm using my brush again on the side now, the side of the brush, like this, and kind of just scrubbing along. And again, now the paper's my assistant. In the beginning of the painting, remember how we said the water dampening the paper up top and doing our first glazing, our first wash, the water and paper was our assistant, where we didn't have to do a lot of work. We just got the paper wet, put some of that blue, beautiful blue color onto the sky and left some white clouds and let the watercolor flow on down. And we did a little bit of manipulation to it, but we did not get really too fancy or overwork anything. We let the watercolor work for us to get the beautiful effects of watercolor. And now the same thing too. Now we're using the paper. This paper, again, this is, it's called Fluid, is the brand, Fluid paper. You can use Fabriano, Arches paper, whatever you like. But when you take the brush and you use the brush on the side here and you're using rough paper, and this is rough paper, rough texture paper, when you just drag your brush on the side across, you get all these wonderful little small bits of light and darks And it kind of just gives you the feeling of details into your painting, which you're really going to enjoy. You really wouldn't want to just have a painting with like a wash across with no textures or any other variations. Variation is great with watercolor. If you can always remember that. I always tell everybody when they ask me in the comment section, like, Chris, how do I get more, excitement in my watercolors? I always mention, like, variation is such a great thing with watercolor. If you can get lots of variations of textures and colors, and instead of just maybe going in and just doing one color, like, oh, I'm going to take green and do the whole, shoreline here with gold or green. You saw how I mixed up all these different colors here. Nothing too much really, right? We use some blue, some brown, some raw umber. So now you'll see that I'm just painting up to the very edge of the tape so that we have a nice crisp, clean border along here. Like that. Doesn't that look good though? And I tend to like to keep the edges of my painting kind of blurry and not too many details or too much fuss on the edges of the painting. I'd like to keep the viewer looking in to the middle of the painting where the excitement is here. Okay, so wow, look how good that looks. Now, what we're going to do next is this tree here. Let's take a quick break though. We've done a lot of work so far. And now we're getting down to the final stages of the painting where we're just going to do a few more details. And that's going to be about it. A few more details and we're going to have everything complete. So let's take a quick break. We'll let this dry a little bit and we'll come back and just do some final touches. And you'll see how everything just comes together now as we do our last 10-15 minutes of work on this. Okay? All right. Having a fun time here. Let's enjoy the rest of the painting. And this is the most fun part of the painting because we know, wow, we're done. We got like 90% of everything completed. Now we just have a few little minor details to put in to make it just look perfect, like the frosting on the cake with the final little bits of detail. Okay? All right, we'll be right back. All right, so let's finish up the painting. The first thing I notice is usually after painting a while, I like to just spritz some water onto the palette and then maybe just lift up some of the paint that we've been using. Tends to be that I like to see more like really nice fresh colors in there. So if too many colors start getting mixed around in my palette, I just tend to have the inclination to just really, even though I think some of the colors could be okay to use again, I'll be cautious, err on the side of caution and just lift up. Doesn't have to be a perfect, just I get the colors off there, the other washes. And this way we can get some fresh, clean color out on the paper. And then I just notice here, like maybe I'll even use, once in a while, I'll use a Sharpie to kind of do a little bit of details to some things. Like here to clean up this window, I might add a little bit of Sharpie marker. Because you can notice we did use a lot of darks over here on this part of the painting, right? The dark shadows and the dark brown. Over here we use some dark brown and blue. Maybe I'll make a little door, a boathouse door here on this with some Sharpie marker, so there's no harm in adding a little bit, using some different media. So I'm using a Sharpie marker here. I don't think there's any problem with that. Maybe a little bit of a shadow there. No big deal. And it looks fine. I think we maybe like that. Okay, now the next thing we wanted to do is, again, we're finishing up with our final details. I thought adding a small, very, very loose, fun-looking tree over here in the foreground will give us some more three-dimensional quality. Let's see how it works out. So what I'll do is I'll use a needlepoint brush like this here. This is a number 8 Alvaro Castanet needlepoint brush. I use these all the time for anything foliage, flower paintings with fine bits of details with stems, and you can use these for trees, bushes, grasses, weeds. These are perfect for any kind of nature, not nature type, as well as you can use it for well, pretty much anything, but it really works great. I like to use them a lot for the flower paintings again, and then anything like landscapes. We're doing some trees and brush and things like that. So I'll take some burnt umber, raw umber here, so raw umber, some cerulean blue, some French ultramarine blue, a little bit of, just a little mixture of everything actually here, just the darks, like that. And then I add a little more water to it, like that. I'll use another bit of tissue here just to dry off the brush a little bit once we get things close to where, that's pretty good. And then what I'll do is we're going to get our tree in the foreground here. And I'll just take the brush and kind of do a quick. So again, I'm doing that kind of that method of just like a little bit at a time, an inch at a time here, like that, to get the main trunk of this tree here. Once I have that, I might make this a little bit darker, French ultramarine blue and burnt umber, a little bit of burnt sienna. Load up the brush really with good amounts of paint and water. Now you can kind of see here, this is not a tremendous amount of water in this, right? So if I lift this up, you can kind of see it's not running like a ton of water. It's like a medium amount of water, just, but not where it's flooding the palette. And that's kind of the consistency you want to have. And then you could take the brush and dry off a little bit of the paint just so you don't have too much on the brush hairs here. And then you can do some really quick, beautiful brush strokes like this, just taking your needlepoint brush and really just like that. And a few twigs go this way. Most of them are going to go upwards toward the light, and perfect. So you can kind of see how we perfect. Now we rinse off the brush. We'll set that aside, and we will take our brush that we started with, which was the number 8 Raphael brush, and we're going to get some sap green, raw umber, a little bit of cerulean blue, a little bit of brown, burnt umber to muddy it up a little bit so that we get a nice olivey green, right? That's a real nice olivey green. Maybe a little bit of burnt sienna in there too over on this side here. So now we have a good mixture of paint, and now what we'll do is we'll put some blots of paint and then tap on it with our finger and do a little bit of finger painting. And what the key is here is we don't want to just make a big, large blot swatch of color on this tree. We want to leave it with just little bits of color like this in various locations, but not filling it in solid. We want to see lots of the background through the tree. So remember that. Does that make sense? Like, we wouldn't want to just sort of make a large, and that's all we do is you just blot some paint, place some paint like that here and there, and then tap on it with your finger. And you can even splash like this and do a few more blots like that, a couple more up here, do a couple more little taps And then maybe toward the center of the tree, it's a little more thicker, like that. But that is it. You could go back in with your needlepoint brush again, like this, and do a little more, a couple more limbs and things like that. But not too many more, just a few, like that. Like that. And maybe one goes that way. All right. Okay, so this is a lot of fun doing this. So there you go. We have a tree, and look how good that looks. It kind of makes everything look really like three-dimensional. So you have like this tree in the foreground here we're looking at, and then further off in the distance we see the windmill and this boathouse over here. So I think that really does help the painting look more three-dimensional. You could take a little bit of that and do a little bit of a reflection in the water, like that. Then I would do a little bit of French ultramarine blue, dry off of the brush a little bit, and let's make the distant ocean here. And then I soften up that line a little bit, just so we have that distant ocean like that. And then we talked about using our white, titanium white with a little bit of gold in there. We take a little bit of raw sienna maybe, or yellow ochre. Put that into the yellow. Mix it around a little bit. This way the white is not stark white. You have a little bit of that yellow ochre in there, like that. Then you dry off a little bit of the white paint there. You don't want too much paint on there. And then you can kind of touch up anything that you might have. So if you thought you went over any lines that you needed to fix up, you can do it now. Here we thought we added some too much paint there. There we go. You can even do a little bit of highlights like that. And there we have it. We did a windmill, lots of exciting colors, washes. We did the glazing technique. We covered the washes to make sure that we're not using too much water with our washes. Again, we covered the colors. We colored our composition in the beginning, our pencil drawing. And again, we did talk about how watercolor is really fun because it does a lot of the work for you if you just let it do it. So that's how the glazing technique works. If you just wet your paper like we showed you in the beginning, you'll be all set. Great work on this painting. Really happy for everybody that you're getting the hang of everything. And I always mention too, I like to create some paintings that I haven't done before, and someone in the comments section, thank you for mentioning that we hadn't created a windmill painting. So here it is, our windmill painting, and let's just peel off the tape too and see how it looks. With our border, once we lift up the tape, we'll move the brush out of the way there. And I think that looks fantastic. I think we have a completed painting, a really nice looking painting. Everybody, we'll see you on the next video. Happy painting. Enjoy the process, and we'll see you on the next video.